Ford had followed Paul Giesler's advice and packed only 2 changes of clothes and what money he had into a black backpack. He changed his shoes for boots and left his room with laundry strewn over a chair, with 3 books and bottled water beside the bed, his papers and drafting equipment on a small table with rulers, pens, protractor, a long roll of paper, a manual of instructions from Hosco, and on the floor a stack of toilet rolls and the sealed jar of scorpions. He began to consider excuses, reasons to leave. Trouble at home, bad news, a failing relative or business. But none seemed credible, as everything about Ford spelled out his solitary nature. Ready at the door, he watched Gunnarsson and Kaprowski unload the 2 Hosco supply trucks, which needed to be emptied before the sun hit the wagons and the containers became too hot to work inside. Gunnarsson hauled packs of canned and boxed supplies to the tailgate, then tossed them down to Kaprowski, his gestures glib and swift, however heavy the package. He called out the items as he threw them, wiped his brow, and instructed Kaprowski on where they should go. Samuels, Clark, Pacosta, and Spider still worked the pits, and the trucks returned one at a time, motors droning as they climbed the hill. Ford decided on Kaprowski as his escort to southern Sipa, this being necessary business and Kaprowski being the only man he could trust. The sun hit at an angle, pink on the huts and the side of the truck, already severe, hot enough to sear, and not yet midsummer. With the vehicles unloaded, the men returned from the pits. Clark ran ahead, shrieking with a hoarse cat call, naked except for his boots, and shot into the sunlight, his thighs and backside covered with Hosco stickers. Manufactured in Virginia with pride. The men whooped and hollered as Clark, white and skinny with red hair, red arms, and a red neck, ran in breakneck circles, kicked back dust, and punched his fists into the air. With Kaprowski in the seat beside him, Clark and Pacosta in the bucket seats ahead, Ford worked hard to keep his thoughts ordered, but understood nothing more about why he needed to leave Camp Liberty than when Giesler had made the call and suffered 4 long hours of ifs and whats and counting down. The promise from Giesler of 200,000 in sterling seemed unimaginable. 200,000, enough to climb out of any trouble, enough to pay off a few debts, and then some, just as long as he did exactly what was asked. With this money, Ford would settle his conscience and start over. He knew Giesler well and trusted that some kind of clarity would come as soon as he arrived at the regional government offices, Financial Division, Southern Sipa. The craft rode up, steep and unsteady, broke through the gray smoke line and leveled out above the haze. Beneath him lay a last glimpse of the burn pits, 5 hard black oblongs, with a sooty trail dusting the desert. The cabins and Quonset already lost to view. He saw no chance of escape. As they approached Amra City, the craft dropped in stuttered steps to avoid attack. A message came to Ford via the pilot. Business at Southern Sipa would need to be brief. Howell had other appointments. He had time to make the transfers just about, but any discussion of the project, that overview he'd asked for, wasn't going to happen today. Kaprowski and Pacosta bickered over a small backpack, some fresh awkwardness breaking between them. He regretted his decision to allow Pacosta and Clark along. He also regretted his decision that they should wear the uniforms Howell had provided. On landing, Kaprowski became so restless that Ford began to wonder if he was somehow involved. The offices for Southern Sipa sat in the grounds of a former school in the center of Amra City. A perimeter fence and blast wall followed the rough circumference of the playground and nominally protected the offices from the covered market and a row of businesses, although most were empty. The glass shot out of the fronts, the walls blackened in a recent attack, the owners returned to Kuwait and Saudi, some to